Hey guys, so the day is finally here. I've waited probably 7 days, 6 days, 8 days, somewhere in that range, about a week for the top coat to cure on this. And that is because, as I said, we are going to rub out the finish with pumice. So I've gathered, I've gathered most of my stuff here. I showed you guys this the last time. Fine pumice, that's an ingredient. Any sort of non-drying oil, I just have this laying around, so I use that as a lubricant. Piece of an old t-shirt, some paper towels for when we're done, and that is pretty much it. So without further ado, I'm going to make sure the lighting is decent and there's not a horrible glare like there is. Maybe that'll be alright. Yeah. Yeah, you guys can see, right? Good. Alright, so, as I said again, this is General Finishes Satin polyurethane. It's Armor Seal, actually, is their brand name. So I'm just going to dust it off real quick, shake my t-shirt out, and now I'm just going to go ahead and sprinkle some of this pumice on the surface. Not a whole lot. I'm going to go cover about a third of the table. And then I'm going to take some of my oil and just kind of dribble that around where I had sprinkled the pumice. I'm just going to play it by ear here. I've never done a surface quite this big before. So I'm actually going to cut my little cloth down a little bit. I don't want a lot because the bigger the cloth, the more it saturates the oil, and then the more you run into needing more oil or pumice. So at this point, I'm just going to put it down and start making a slurry, trying to keep the pumice and the oil on the bottom side of my little pad here. And that is looking good. Okay, so now I'm going to work on half of the chessboard at a time. So all I'm doing here, putting a fair amount of pressure down, and I am just rubbing in circles. And what this is doing on a microscopic level is the fine pumice particles are acting as an abrasive. I have no idea what the abrasive quality of fine pumice is, but when I do edit the video, I'll try to find out, and I'll put a little note in there so you guys know and so I know. So that's it. Basically, I'm just going to keep rubbing over it. Now it is tiring. You hear me kind of struggling to talk because you are putting a fair amount of elbow grease into this. As the oil dries, it becomes trickier, stickier and stickier. Alright. Now just on the first pass, that looks a lot better than it did. And so what I'm doing here, I'm trying to get rid of satin polyurethane. When you're going over multiple different woods and a big surface, you're bound to have some streaks in the finish. And by streaks, I mean areas where the finish is a little more opaque in one spot and a little more translucent in another spot. It's bound to happen, and it's just really no big deal. You just got to rub it out. And in order to rub it out, you've got to wait for it to cure enough to be abraded. Polyurethane by nature is very abrasion resistant. So especially right after it's put on, 24 hours, 48 hours later, it's still very soft. And so the rubbing out of the polyurethane would not work quite as well. But we've waited the requisite week, and so now it is hardened up enough that it is going to have some effect, and I can see that. I'm going to go ahead and do another run on this half, which basically I'm just going to repeat. I'm not going to use quite as much pumice this time because my rag should be loaded with a fair amount, and I'm not going to use quite as much oil this time either. Okay, I am pretty happy with that. Again, I'm not sure what you guys can make out from there, but at any rate, I'm going to flip this around and give the other half a try. Hopefully a little more carefully than that next time. And so here we go, second half. I'm going to use the same pad. As I said, by now it's saturated pretty heavily with oil and hopefully pumice as well. And that should make it last a little longer on this side, hopefully. Now you can kind of hear the scratchiness. I hope you can hear it. I can hear it. It's much more pronounced than it was in the beginning. I'm guessing because the pad is loaded from the first half and I just added more. I'm overlapping my circles because you really don't want to miss any spots, because that will definitely show up. And now, when I am done rubbing out a finish, I make it a rule to always finish with some strokes in the direction of the grain. Something as fine as fine pumice, I am not 100% sure that makes a difference. It's just something that I do, so I'm going to do it. And now I'm going to go ahead and go around the edges just with what's loaded on the pad. And the edges are so small that any streakiness, probably, if there is any, wouldn't be able to even tell. It's just on these big, wide, flat surfaces. And this is 24 by 24, so it's wide enough that streakiness would be noticeable. So now I'm going to go, once I reposition my pucks, and try to do a full length pass. In fact, I'm going to add a little bit more oil because I think that's what the hang-up is. I think I have enough pumice on here still. Trying to stop short before I hit the border again, because this is the finishing passes. I want those to be in the direction of the grain. Okay, so that's that. I'm hoping that that's good enough. The only way to tell is to get rid of the oil and grit that's on the surface, and for that I just use paper towels and kind of wipe it off, flipping your paper towels over periodically so that you don't just end up spreading the oil and pumice around. And I would imagine that even at this stage I am still abrading the surface somewhat. So even in my wiping off, I'm going to wipe off with the grain. probably go through quite a few paper towels because we put quite a bit of oil on there. And I'm not going to forget about the edges. And now you just kind of want to look down, and I can tell as I'm wiping this off, I can still see streaks of oil and pumice, and that's fine. So I'm going to keep going here. I would imagine at some point I might need to use some water. I have a little bit of Windex, and that's usually my last step. So water or Windex. And I think I might be at that point now. So yeah, I'm not picking up very much oil. Well, there's still a little oil on there. Let me try this one. You want to go until you don't hear that abrasive, scratchy noise. That's a pretty good indication that you've gotten most of the pumice up off the surface. The issue is the pumice lodges itself down into the dips and valleys of the wood fibers, so it can be a little stubborn to get out. But I think we got almost a clean paper towel there. So I'm now going to switch to some Windex. And a clean paper towel again. Now I can tell already that the finish is just beautifully satin. So that definitely worked. Uniform. In fact, you could probably see in the camera that that glare that you guys had that was right about here has been reduced to just a glow, I guess you could call it. That is fantastic. Now, here's the key. You're not done until you can wipe your finger across and it does not leave a smear mark. If you see a smear mark, that means there's still oil left on the surface. So, if there's still oil left on the surface, the last, should I say it, the last stage here would be to use a little bit of mineral spirits, and what that's going to do is it's going to break up the oil and really clean the surface off. And now that the finish has been curing for a week, so the mineral spirits is not going to hurt the polyurethane, especially not because we're going to rub it around and wipe it off pretty quickly. So let me grab some of that and I'll be right back. Okay, so I got some mineral spirits in the rag and I am just real quick wiping it over the surface of the chessboard just to dissolve the oils that are left from our rub out. Hopefully getting down in the nooks and crannies and pulling up any oil that's trapped in the pores. And now without further ado, some more paper towels. And then we'll just dry it off quickly. Okay. And that's it. I'm drawing my finger across and I don't see any streakiness, which means we got the oil off the surface. Next step is polishing it. To polish it, I have a special furniture polish that I use, and I'm going to use that furniture polish in conjunction with a clean piece of paper towel, polish it up, and she'll be ready to use. Okay, I'm back. I'm going to use this wood cleaner and polish that I picked up. It's Parker & Bailey. It's out of Maine. The key here is that it's wax-free, non-abrasive formula. The wax-free part's important because anytime you apply wax, it's easily scuffable. I mean, it's easily repairable as well, but I put the polyurethane down because the polyurethane should provide protection enough. And then worst case scenario, something gets dinged up, I can always sand the polyurethane down with 220 grit a little bit, scuff it up, and put another coat on. If it's got wax on it, that creates an issue. So I don't like to use wax on projects like this. I use wax on, say, keepsake boxes that really aren't going to get handled or abused very much. They're going to sit on a shelf. Anything that's going to see a lot of abuse, tabletop, which this is sort of a tabletop. I like to stick with just the top coat being a urethane of some sort. So here goes the polish. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the chessboard. See if I can zoom you guys in and look at the beauty. Just a nice uniform satin sheen all the way down. No streakiness anywhere. Perfect. And the reason I went with the satin on this, it's a chessboard, it's a tabletop. I mean, if you're sitting in a sunny place, you wouldn't want to have a bright reflection coming off the board. Other than that, I think it just allows you to see the beauty of the wood better. Gloss is nice, but gloss tends to obscure the beauty of the wood, in my opinion, in certain instances, especially in this instance where you've got a bunch of different woods. You've got cherry, you've got amazette, you've got sapelli, you've got bird's eye maple. So you got all that going on. Satin allows you to really just kind of truly see the wood as it is, without the distractions that a gloss finish can cause. So that's it. I'm going to go ahead and break the pieces out. You guys haven't seen those yet. Put the pieces on, set it up like we were about to play, and just give you a little rundown on how I made the pieces. All right, here it is, the chessboard. I'll tell you what, that was a heck of a project. I've never made a chessboard. I've never done a veneered project quite as tricky and intricate as this. And I mean, the inlay border was easy. The issue was creating these squares, which are 2 1/4 by 2 1/4, getting those sized exactly 90-degree corners all around, getting them taped up, transferring that to a piece of MDF, then making sure that I could somehow get a border that would be the exact width all the way around out of veneer, mitering the corners, which in some instances I did not do a great job at, but I think it looks good. I think it looks awesome. I'm going to have some fun playing on this. I had even thought about possibly turning it into sort of a table, wherein the bottom, which is solid Amazique, I would make a table, maybe some other wood that would contrast well with Amazique, and it would be an Amazique tabletop set down in sort of a pocket. And then when you were ready to play chess, you would flip the top over. There would be maybe a little finger hole on one of the sides that you could reach under, flip the top over. Now you've got a chessboard that would sit down in, and the drawer in the table would actually have a compartment in the back that would hold the pieces. So I might do that. I'm not sure. I can tell you this, that making the rest of the table would be a lot easier than what I've done here. Now these pieces, this is the first time you guys have seen these, they are all made from white ash. And I basically just winged it. I winged it. Just cut pieces. I did research online how tall a king is supposed to be, how tall all the other pieces are supposed to be in relation to the king, how the sizing of the squares, as I said, 2 1/4. I believe that is regulation for, I don't know, the World Chess Federation or something like that. So I tried to make this thing as close to regulation or in regulation as possible. So the pieces are all white ash. The black pieces are white ash that I dyed using an ebony dye. The designs I just sort of came up with. I did do a Google search of chess pieces and got kind of like a rough idea. So there's a lot better pieces out there that are done. I did no hand carving. This is all table saw, be it the kerfs. Actually, I take that back. The rook, I did use a 1/4 inch router bit and basically routed a crosshairs in the top of that with the router table. Well, and now that I think about it, even the queen and the king, I used a 90-degree point bit and did the same thing here. Now what we have going on here, these are the kings. The king has a defined crown, and that's made of purple heart. And the idea was that he would stand out. The queen also has a crown, but the crown is part of her piece. So I actually had to miter and cut individually the different sections of this crown and then glue it on, and I made a little I think it was like a 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch rabbet in the top of the piece, and then set these pieces down in. That was a lot of work. The thing is, I did the same thing for the black pieces, or for the black king rather, but I tried to not dye the purple heart, and it just wasn't working out real well. I was getting dye on it, so I just went ahead and dyed the crown. Well, the end result is the crown looks black when it's actually the same purple heart that was used on the white piece. And so now it's like, well, why did you use all black over here and not all white over here? Well, the answer is they're both purple heart. I dyed the crown, and unfortunately I couldn't find a way around that because the piece is so small, the little corners are so intricate. It would have been really difficult for me to dye this white piece black without touching any portion thereof of this purple heart. And I got to dye in here because that's black. So I just dyed the whole thing. I think it turned out pretty well. One more thing, this was also done with a 1/4 inch router bit, and I actually, the cool thing about this is you can see it tapers to nothing. I just used the crown as a spacer. So if you can imagine it sitting on the router table like that, you've got a little space up to the top. So I set the router bit such that it would intersect with the first kerf line, and then just drop the piece down and ran it off. And that gave me that cool tapered look. 1/4 inch router bit there, and I think I used a 5mm bit there. Oop. So that's it. It's all done. Like I said, if I end up making the table and doing that whole thing, I'll definitely show you guys that process and give you guys a look at the end result. But as far as the chessboard videos for now, this is it. It's done. I hope you enjoyed the process. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments tab. I did not, unfortunately, film my cutting of the squares. Sometime down the road, if I do make another chessboard, I will be sure to film my process for that. So, as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.